Good afternoon, everyone. Today is the feast of the dedication of the Lateran Basilica in Rome. That's a very interesting feast, isn't it, in the church? The dedication of a Lateran Basilica in Rome. Well, let's talk about it because it's an important feast to understand. I was telling the people at Mass this morning how the church is there to represent the heavenly Jerusalem. You know, it's made of brick and mortar, and it helps us to dive into the mystery, though, the physical church, that is. Dive into the mystery of what church is. Because really, church is a group of people, not a building. See, the people who attend the sacred mysteries, they're the living stones. Isn't that beautiful? The living stones. They're the ones who make up what is understood as the church. The physical building is consecrated and dedicated to the honor and glory of Almighty God and for the sanctification of His people. But it's always to remind ourselves that we who go into these buildings to celebrate the sacred mystery, we are the living stones who give God worship and praise. So, in the church's liturgical calendar, you're going to find that there are feasts just attributed to a dedication of the church, like the Lateran Basilica. The Lateran Basilica is in Rome. In fact, the Lateran Basilica is the cathedral of the diocese of Rome. Many people may think, well, isn't St. Peter's the cathedral in Rome? No, unfortunately, that's a misnomer. Like that might be a cathedral for Rome. That's the Pope's cathedral. That's incorrect. The St. Peter's Basilica is the church or the basilica of both East and West Catholics. So Eastern Catholics and Western Catholics like ourselves. So it's where the entire church around the world gathers for the celebration of the sacred mysteries. So it's a basilica for the entire world, the entire church, the universal church, the Catholic Church, St. Peter's Basilica. But if you look at each diocese or archdiocese, you will find that there is a cathedral where the bishop has his chair. Now, the word cathedral comes from the Latin word cathedra, which means chair. In other words, it's the church of the chair. That's what cathedral means. And it's the bishop or archbishop's church for his diocese. Like, for instance, Archbishop Perez. Where is the cathedral? 18th and the Parkway in Philadelphia. There he has his chair in which he exercises his threefold ministry of teaching, sanctifying, and governing. The flock entrusted to his care, which is called the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. So how beautiful it is that Christ, as the shepherd, Christ tending to the flock, so the bishop has a responsibility of tending to his flock in his local diocese or archdiocese. And he does that so beautifully at the chair in which his local church is then established. The cathedral. The cathedral gets its name from cathedra, the chair of the bishop. It's important for us to understand these symbolisms because it zeroes in again for the meaning and the significance of who we are and what we do. Okay, let's get back to the Lateran Basilica. It's St. John's, named after St. John the Baptist. Lateran comes from the Laterini family, who donated the land or the property on which that basilica, that cathedral was built. Back in the year 324. That goes back a long time, doesn't it? I've been in St. John Lateran Church, the Pope's local cathedral. So that's his cathedral. You know, every place in the world has a diocese or an archdiocese. Believe it or not, Rome is a diocese. It's not an archdiocese. And who's the bishop of the Diocese of Rome? None other than the Pope, Pope Francis. So he's not only the Pope for the whole Catholic Church, in which he celebrates Mass in St. Peter's Basilica for the entire church, but he's also the head of a diocese. He's the bishop of the Diocese of Rome. And so he has a cathedral, like every other diocese or archdiocese. And that cathedral is called St. John Lateran in Rome. And so today the church celebrates the feast of the dedication, dedicating that cathedral specifically as bishops govern and teach and sanctify in their own local cathedral. So it's a way in which the church celebrates liturgically of a dedication and what the purpose of the local church is all about, and how bishops are integral in teaching the faith, sanctifying God's people, and governing the church. And so they do it so well from their cathedral, their cathedral. And so today, in a particular way, we look at the Pope's Cathedral Church, St. John Lateran, and we look to its dedication. And we understand a dedication by not merely a building of brick and mortar, but more specifically how of course, the church itself is made up of living stones. The people who have been baptized, confirmed, nourished by the food of the Eucharist, had their sins cleansed, married, and celebrated funeral masses. All of that, the living stones as they enter into the body of that sacred place. We call it a church. But let's be very clear, the church is not really a building, it's a group of people. And the only reason why the building gets its name church is because it houses people that have been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. So today, of course, is the dedication of that cathedral, symbolic of all the cathedrals and churches around the world. And it looks to that diocese, the Diocese of Rome, and to their local bishop, which is Bishop Francis or Pope Francis. The word Pope just means Father, Father Francis. And that's what we celebrate today. The gospel today is to remind us of everything good happening from the church, nothing bad. You know, back in the day, they had money changers and oxen and sheep and doves they were selling. That was common back then. There were common money changers, you know, because many people traveled and they had money changers. They also sold things, and that was not the problem. You know what the problem was that Jesus was a little perturbed about? Stealing and taking advantage of visitors, you know? So Jesus was not happy with that. And I told the people at Mass today that there's a justifiable anger and an unjustifiable anger. You know, sometimes when we're upset, it could be justified. So don't be like scandalized that Jesus turned over the money changers or got a cord and chased them out. What they were doing was an abomination, and they had to be stopped. And Jesus had to correct it. And so Jesus did that to teach them a powerful lesson about the Father's house. Zeal for his Father's house consumes him, and so it should consume all of us. None of us should steal from one another. You know, most of the time you'll see people in vestibules of churches and even outside the front door selling things, and that's perfectly okay. just make sure that we do it honestly, which we do. But if there's anything dishonest, then it should be really told to the pastor, because no one should be stealing from anybody. But that was back then, and today is now. Usually parishes sell cookies, or I don't even think they sell, to tell you the truth. It's all donations. So that's even a whole nother ball game. You know how we sell cookies or sell something like that? We usually ask for a donation. We're not like selling like they were back in Jesus's day. So see, even that's another separation of what it was. But even like lighting a candle in church and putting money into the box, that's a donation. Whether you're buying a candle or buying a package of Christmas cards, it's just there. No one's there with a cash register in church. You're saying, oh, I want this. So you take it and put a donation in the candle box. That's fine. To make it available for people to help their own spiritual devotions, to help them have sacramentals and things like that. So, but Jesus and that gospel talks about a whole different issue, so far removed from what, parishes do today. So I just wanted to bring you to an attention of today's feast, because it's kind of like interesting. Today we celebrate the feast of the dedication of a basilica in Rome called St. John Lateran. Well, you're probably Googling and say, St. John Lateran, I've never heard of him. Well, you wouldn't hear of him because he doesn't exist. St. John the Baptist does. Lateran from the Laterini family who donated the property. So, back then, if it was a big deal, they wanted their name attached to it. And coming from an Italian-American parish, I understand that, because a lot of people like their names on things. Today we have like a memorial tree and we put the names back there, or we have another way of recognizing people who have donated. Even on stained glass windows, people would have their name in the window. Did you ever see that? In memory of the Smith family. And it would be right in the window. So every parish does it differently. Every part of the country does it differently. Every country does it differently. Whether they have a memorial board or tree or recognition catalog, whatever they do, or on big items, put it into the item itself. So the dedication of the Lateran Basilica of St. John, the Pope's Cathedral, where his chair is. Another note I made today in the homily was that, did you ever notice that St. Peter's Basilica, which is not a cathedral, it's a basilica, doesn't have the cathedra, the Pope's chair or the bishop's chair, because it's not a cathedral. It's a basilica for the world. So it's not for a diocese or an archdiocese. So they wouldn't have a chair. They bring a chair over for the Pope and they remove it just for functionality. But there is no chair because it's not a cathedral for a diocese. It's a church for the world, for the East and the West. Okay? Well, just wanted to share this little bit of Catholic trivia, I guess, with you. Have you understand some of these things, and if you didn't know them, just to put that into your little bank of knowledge that will help you even grow more and more in love, like I am, with the Holy Roman Catholic Church. Have a nice day, everybody.